Hello there. Here's some more news. No, really, I mean that. It's not just some empty phrase routinely ejaculated from my numb lips, devoid of meaning or passion after years of exhausted repetition. I guess it's that too, but not for this specific episode. Mostly not. No, folks, this time, I'd like to truly give you some more news, as in a scattering of news stories. Some of it, but more. See, you might have noticed that the current year is now 2021, and that's fine, I guess. We can't do anything about the passage of time. Also, 2020 was terrible, mainly because of that guy. You know the guy, and the virus. You know the one. It killed Herman Cain. The virus, not the guy, but also probably the guy. The point is, the news was pretty much dominated by those two things. Not Herman Cain, the virus and the other guy. And unfortunately, that means a lot of stuff from the past year might have been missed. Lots of news clutter falling under the seats of this high-speed railway through the pandemic hell we call life. That's why this particular news dude has opted to spend the next however many minutes rummaging those dusty crevices to give you all the junk you may or may not have missed from the past year. Doubling back, if you will. Like the ZZ Top song in Back to the Future Part 3. Or rather, turning to look at the disaster we just swerved past. Like Marty almost hitting the Rolls Royce at the end of Back to the Future Part 3. And while there's probably other Back to the Future Part 3 comparisons we can list off, let's just put up a title. Catching up on the garbage you missed during the pandemic. Yeah, nice and simple. Harmless, assorted news. No need to be scared, folks. Relax. Put your feet up. Like Marty at the beginning of Back to the Future Part 3. I mean, okay, yes, a lot of this will surely be depressing because that's just how news is. But isn't it just nice to know what you're getting? No complicated impeachment, no countless virus fatalities, just news. By a news dude, sitting here without pants, looking you in the eye with my hands fully in view, telling you what's what. Manageable, undemanding, maybe with a few unintrusive jokes in there, like pointlessly yet effortlessly working in Back to the Future Part 3 references. Yes, certainly, this will be an easy video with no weird puppets or eggs or interruptions or... See? No comedic irony here, thank you very much. Do we have a fake out where something wacky happens now that the audience feels safe? Good. That's good. Anyway, let's get into the news. Just you and me and... No. Nothing zany. That's what I thought. Okay, just good old-fashioned fun, like police brutality. But that's the stuff you love. Christ, okay. Perhaps buckle up. I don't know if you remember this, but last year was pretty, full of that police brutality, including, but not limited to that time where...
Gordie, stop! It's you! From the future!
No!
Did I catch you at a bad time?
Always. If you're going back in time to talk to me, you're always catching me at a bad time.
Oh. Well, since I'm here anyway, I couldn't help but overhear your desire to change the passage of time. But you're in luck, little me. Thanks to this, time can now be reversed. Simply put this into your computer, and time will rewind itself, sending a video message in reverse through the events you just witnessed. I call it unforwardtion.
Oh good, you're doing Tenet. Yeah, we've all seen that, for sure. Everyone is talking about Tenet. Thanks, just give me the thing.
Bloop.
Oh, wow, it worked. You sent it back in time. You did it. Any other horse you want to say or do? Some kind of song or anything you need to get out of your system now.
Oh, well, what are you up to? Do you need any help with your news program? You know, back in my day, I used to be quite the
And we're
news
moving
man.
on. Just gonna... There we go. Like nothing happened. Where were we? Oh, right, the police brutality. Good stuff. Not so much a thing you missed as it is a thing that dominated the news cycle last summer. Specifically, the almost entirely peaceful Black Lives Matter protests calling for the defunding of the police, which suddenly stopped when Joe Biden was elected, therefore ending all racism. Or Maybe the election just took over the news cycle. I don't recall what ended the racism, just that it was definitely ended. And now that the dust is settling, now that all racism and police brutality's ended, we're getting a scattering of lawsuits, half-assed apologies, and shocking revelations of just how shitty the police were during these dark times that are totally now over. Not to mention that thing where a bunch of inflamed, predominantly cracker-ass and pro-authoritarian Stop the Steal protesters stormed the U.S. Capitol and was met with a hilariously less hitty and tear-gassy response from the police, showcasing the obvious difference when the gathering is of a whiter, more bootlicky form. And then those people literally attacked the police with Blue Lives Matter flags, as if, I don't know, maybe the people who wielded those all last year didn't actually care about police lives so much as police upholding their own values, specifically white supremacy. Anywho, overall, the other protests, the Black Lives Matter ones, claiming that police were poorly trained and violent racists, were met with overwhelming affirmation that the police were indeed those things. Like in 100-page reports on police violence during those protests. And then we all kinda stopped talking about it. Because racism had ended, thank you, Joe. But what if, perhaps, hear me out, what if racism hadn't actually ended? And while we all moved on, a bunch of those police that did the bad things, that made the headlines, are now quietly getting off faster than a perverted mime.
Erie County District Attorney John Flynn says he makes no apologies after charging 2 Buffalo police officers with felony assault last summer. On Thursday, Flynn announced a grand jury had dismissed those charges against officers Aaron Torgalski and Robert McCabe. They were arrested after they pushed 75-year-old protester Martin Gugino to the ground last June. Flynn couldn't go into much detail about what happened inside the grand jury proceedings, since that's kept secret under federal law.
Oh, right. You remember that brazen assault? The one we all saw happen on camera where 2 cops shoved an old man over while unprovoked, and that old man would go on to have a concussion and ultimately lose hearing in one of his ears and have to walk with a cane? You know that really open and shut case of assault we all saw happen, and we're like, geez, well, if those 2 brazen goons don't get punished, then maybe we should just stop having America. Yeah, they didn't get punished, despite their crime being on camera. And we'll probably never know why that is, despite definitely knowing that they did the assault. Because it's on camera, you see. Which I guess isn't enough to get a cop in trouble.
In Philadelphia, a high-ranking police officer caught on video beating a 21-year-old Temple University student has been charged with aggravated assault.
That's Police Staff Inspector Joseph Bologna, a real Paul Blart melon farmer seen beating a protester on the head in June. The protester, a 21-year-old Temple University student, required stitches for their injuries, but not before getting arrested while suffering a head injury. You can probably guess where this is heading, which is Joey Baloney becoming a free man at the start of the new year after a judge ruled that, quote, prosecutors had not presented enough evidence to establish that Baloney's use of his baton amounted to a crime. You know, despite the evidence being him doing that crime on camera. And if it's not a crime, perhaps we should make it one? To quote his attorney after the charges that we all saw happen on camera were dropped, this is really a great victory for those people like Inspector Bologna. Those people being, one assumes, meat-themed hate balloons who should be in jail for violence. Don't adjust your YouTubes. That schlubby blur of rage is also Inspector Joey Baloney, recorded a day before the other assault, doing a separate, equally less provoked assault. Anyway, no charges against this wacky and terrifying fictional man who actually exists. Or at least not yet. To be fair, they have refiled the charges. You know, because he was filmed doing the crimes. It seems like it should be easy, but whatever, I'm not a law fella, just a flawed yella. Yuck, yuck, cops are murderers. Like, you hear about when they shot Black Lives Matter protester Jorge Gomez back in June and claimed he had pointed a gun at them. Turns out that, according to new surveillance footage, he was actually just running away. So yeah, it sure seems like they executed a man publicly. and then lied about what happened? And maybe could someone go to jail about it, please? But hey, at least we successfully defunded them. No, not actually that either. And in fact, a good deal of big cities are increasing their police budgets, including left-leaning ones. And Minneapolis, the place where George Floyd was killed that promised to disband the police, didn't actually do that. And the cities that did try to cut budgets didn't really do it by much, and like almost nothing got done. That's a weird thing to happen, geez, and gosh, and golly. Seems like there needs to be continued calls to action for protests on the same level as last year, and like, wowee, there's just so much to get into here, including but not limited to all the other recent cases of police officers shooting unarmed black people since George Floyd. You know, like this man named Carl Dorsey, or this man named Dennis Plowden, or how about Jonathan Price, who was tased and then shot and killed by a cop for the crime of trying to break up a fight. Oh, and here's a mental health call that ended in the unarmed and black man being shot and killed. And here's one in Ohio where the unarmed black man wasn't doing a crime, but was shot within 10 seconds of the officer showing up. That was 3 weeks after cops in the same city shot Casey Goodson Jr. multiple times and in the back. But I'm sure they had a perfectly good reason to do it, nothing fishy there. I'm sure there will be some kind of consequences, right? Like how this officer totally lost his job for lighting up a vehicle that was backing up after giving no warning to the car and killing a 19-year-old man named Marcellus Stinnett. They also wounded his girlfriend, who later said the cops were harassing them prior to the murder, but justice, because he lost his job for the murder that he did. Dude has to get a new job. It's pretty tough, right? These days, especially. You gotta fill out applications and stuff. Yuck. Anyway, thus completes our update on police violence and protests. We, totally did it, you guys. And also, I'm sorry. This video is already a handful, but with any luck, we'll come the hell on.
Surfernet Seattle wide enough. The surfernet bilks against the mouth. You show's name Agnes. Manager when you're here, you know, your
Okay, yeah, I get it. It's just like Tenet. Can we just focus on... Alright, I'm sorry. I guess this means I'm just gonna be doing reverse stuff. That's great. Looking forward to that. Glad that's in my future. I'm really happy about all of this. Yeah, no, I get it. Time is inevitable, and Ouroboros or whatever. Thanks, see ya. Sorry about that, everyone. I agree that it sucks and makes no sense, and like, it's not even really timely at this point, and no one saw the movie. Anyway, cops, who also suck. Like the film Tenet sucks. Also things that suck. Prisons. You know those places we've been trying not to think about since COVID hit because, yeah, they definitely have a COVID problem, resulting in 2,100 inmate deaths, along with 170 guard deaths. Meanwhile, ICE saw the highest death rate for detainees in 15 years, also because of that whole virus thing, but also because it's been gradually going up since 2018 because of suicides and lack of medical treatment because, you know, it's ICE and they are evil, but also just exists still, and it's pretty unclear if Joe Biden can or even wants to do anything about that. Like, he placed a 100-day moratorium on deportations, then a judge blocked that, then ICE just kept deporting people, including a witness to a mass shooting. Then they reopened a child detention facility. Migrant influx facility. Oh, and also a child detention facility. And sure, this is specifically for unaccompanied children who came to the border, and that's going to be something we have to deal with, I guess. So perhaps, unless we make actual sweeping changes to border policy, like, for example, not having one, then we're gonna have to accept that this is just who we are. We are a nation that will put kids in detention camps, no matter who is the president. Anyway, prisons are bad. We know this. We know that even in 2020, there were still people facing ridiculous jail time for marijuana. We know that COVID was bad, and everyone is jobless and hungry, and it's like the second Great Depression, and so on. This isn't news you missed, so much as news you tried not to think about. How everyone is going broke because of the pandemic. I mean, except for the really rich people. That's weird. how the rich are thriving while the poor get poorer. I'm sure no one has noticed that before. Listen, I'm certainly sure that there was good stuff that happened in 2020, and we'll certainly find whatever that might be. Or not. I'm not an oracle. I just want to get through this
Young Cody, hello, it's me!
No.
I forgot to tell you about the hat!
Yeah, no, I saw the hat on the other me. Just give me the hat so we can...
See, due to the reversing particles involved in unfortunization, the human brain cannot withstand the minor fluctuations of temperature caused by the time totem's radioactive properties, which is why we've developed this smart-looking hat to protect the user, or timestronaut, from any
That's great, man. Real hip stuff. Please just give me the fancy hat so we can move forward.
Hey, what part of the video are you at? Did you get to Flint? I mean, I'm you from the future, so I've actually watched the video you're making right now.
Just give me the hat and go.
Oh, sure. You were going to talk about how, after everyone forgot, Elon Musk actually helped to clean up the water in Flint, and how he's one of the good ones, and you've been too hard on him.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I was gonna say.
And you're sorry for all of the times you made fun of him. You know, now that he's running for president.
He's what?
Oh, I guess you're not at that part yet.
Please stop.
Spoilers, Joe Rogan becomes the VP.
Hang it up now.
Don't forget your hat.
Thanks, it worked. Sorry, everyone. So sorry. But yeah, he's right, I was gonna talk about Flint. And their water did get fixed, mostly. It turns out it's still going on. And yeah, Musk helped. Thanks, man. Enjoy retweeting the Babylon Bee about Le Epic Bacon while your workers get COVID or fired. And while you might not have paid too much attention, 2020 was a big year for seeking justice over everything that had happened. In 2019, they literally called a do-over in their probe of who was accountable. And then, cut to a year later, they have charged former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder and 8 of his officials with actual crimes. Crimes that will put some of those people, hopefully, into a jail for some time. I mean, not black man stealing hedge clippers amounts of jail time, of course, that would be preposterous. But if you're wondering what the hell actually happened, well, back in 2014, the city of Flint had switched their main water source to the Flint River to save money, but officials failed to immediately treat the water so it wouldn't cause corrosion in the pipes. This then caused, corrosion in the pipes. Then came the lead in the water, followed by efforts to cover up the contamination. Hence, the people now going to jail, hopefully. And that's kind of good news. The justice of it all. And the fact that residents have reached a $600 million settlement. But also, this isn't really the end of the problem. And you know who realizes this? The citizens of Flint, who still don't trust the water. Because after years of being lied to by officials, it's kind of hard to trust a system that poisoned their kids. See, Michigan, like other states, have something called emergency managers who, in the case of a financial emergency, can take control of a local government. They aren't elected officials, but rather appointed by the governor. And it was these emergency managers who currently face the most jail time and were primarily responsible for letting Flint's water go untreated. And despite this, there have been no changes to the laws that led to several unelected people having this much control over a city. Nor have similar water crises been fully addressed in places like Newark and Appalachia and Detroit. And just the general fact that when you look at EPA data, it turns out that communities of color are hit hardest by violations to their drinking water. So yeah, there's gonna be some trust issues for a while. Also, weird we have to pay for water, since it's the thing that keeps us alive. But hey, at least we can enjoy that a few people are going to jail, hopefully, even though the larger issue hasn't been resolved. So it's not like good news. But again, it's nice to see bad people get punished for, the delicious revenge of it all. Like how Oklahoma is now trying to return $2 million worth of hydroxychloroquine they purchased last year when we had that other president. You know the president. What's the name? Dommy Crump. The Gleason fellow played him in the TV play about Squid and the Whale guy. Doesn't matter. Anywho, former president Domhnall Gleeson was all up on that hydroxychloroquine dick. And so the Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt, bought $2 million worth, saying at the time that he was, quote, being proactive to try and protect Oklahomans. Fun aside, Oklahoma is one of the few states without a mask mandate, but sure, way to protect, Stitt! And now, after everyone caught up to the fact most of us already knew where hydroxychloroquine didn't actually help, this guy wants his money back. Gosh, do you even remember hydroxychloroquine? Remember how there was a point where conservatives were really trying to make that work? Like, wow, thanks for the Daily Mail article, Ben, sharing the totally reputable Daily Mail, and how they were wrong, and that probably cost lives, and we just all moved on like they didn't do that. All right, everyone, I'm just gonna ignore him. And we're moving on. Come the f*** on. Hey Cody, it's Warmbo. I just found a magic conch shell on the beach. When you touch it, you can't tell a lie. Anyway, I'm coming over. I just want to get through an episode, I swear to Christ! Okay, pushing forward, folks. No other choice. So hey, speaking of shitting on Republicans, also shitting on Democrats. Remember that Iowa caucus that went horribly wrong last year and everyone blamed an app by a company named Shadow Inc. and that spawned a bunch of conspiracy theories? Well, it turns out that an audit has now revealed it to be completely the fault of Democrats, specifically the DNC, who delayed the creation of said app for so long that when it finally rolled out, it came with a 34-page manual on how to use it. Like all good apps should have. And then, at the last minute, demanded even more changes to the app, making it even more buggy and useless. Shadow Inc. then had to change its name and CEO, and I don't know, maybe they suck for other reasons, but it sure seems like in this specific case, they were killed by the Democrats who sucked. Not like evil sucking, in this specific case, but just being slow and old and dumb. Old sucking. Sucking the olds. Anyway, we'll have lots to say about the many ways Democrats will self-sabotage, but this is just a taste of the next 4 years. You know the stuff: inadequacy, buckling to Republicans, protecting the wealthy, going back on promises, rebranding old ideas to seem new. It's gonna be a blast. Hey, champ. Speaking of general incompetence and blasts and governments not learning, you remember that explosion in Beirut last year? The one where nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate was left on a port in Lebanon for years before exploding and killing 211 people? And sheesh, if you had family that was one of those people or were injured or lost your home, you'd probably want, like, answers, and perhaps someone held responsible. Well, suck some ducks. It turns out that none of those things happened. You see, because the people who were responsible for the explosion were also the politicians, who also happened to be the people in charge of the investigation. And so when the Lebanese government appointed a former military court judge to investigate, and that judge charged 2 former ministers and the current prime minister with negligence, the prime minister refused to be questioned and then halted the probe for some reason. Then they removed the judge who implicated them. Boy, what a mess. Can you picture it? A government where the people in charge of serving justice were also the people who were guilty. Can you picture it? Can you picture that? Can you? I'm not trying to compare governments, of course. It's just wild how much governments suck in general. Maybe we shouldn't have them. Live in yurts and do drugs, and like, power is bad, I don't know. There doesn't have to be a message here, we're just catching up on the news. Like, did you know there's a whole coup that happened? No, not that one. A different one that succeeded. You probably saw the meme about it, where the Myanmar military seized power and then jailed their newly re-elected civilian leader for the crime of illegally importing walkie-talkies, like some kind of weird sham. Can you picture it? A fair election disrupted by flimsy claims used to justify a forceful takeover. Can you picture that? Anywhoosies, the US is imposing a bunch of sanctions on the country, such as freezing assets that benefit Myanmar's government and preventing the military from accessing certain funds. You know, halting financial support for a group of people trying to do a coup. Can you picture that? Anyway, I'm sure the sanctions will hurt the bad people instead of just people who live there, like all sanctions surely do. Maybe this is the subject of a larger episode, but perhaps we should start looking at areas of the world where coups happen a lot and learning why that is, now that we're, dabbling in coups. See, it turns out that places like Thailand and West Africa, where coups happen a bunch, well, they have some things in common. These areas tend to be not quite a dictatorship or a democracy, but rather treading water in the middle. Myanmar, for example, was ruled by armed forces until 2011, and this creates a cultural normalization of instability, as well as low consequences for groups like the Economic Community of West African States, which often fails to resolve coups. Instability, normalization, and lack of consequences. Can you picture that? So, like, perhaps if the country you are now in is showing light coup symptoms, it might be a sign that your current democracy is falling apart, and authoritarianism and lack of consequences are slowly being normalized. Be sure to consult your doctor when taking any medications to help you not think about the coup, yurt drugs, etc. Dicks! Sorry, folks. Oh my god, it's okay. Hello, Mr. Cody. It's Wormbo again. Just wanted to remind you to do an ad break. He's actually right, and this is actually really helpful for Wormbo, so thank you, Wormbo. Hold on, I'm getting another text. Can Wormbo do the ad? Sorry, folks, I'm letting Wormbo do the ad.
Smiley face, spider web, kitty cat, flower, pineapple. Oh, hello, everybody! It's Wombo! Me! Wombo loves texting Mr. Cody and learning about communication and leadership and talking and learning and being creative, and that's why Wombo has teamed up with Skillshare, so the first 1,000 subscribers who click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity and communication and learning and friends. Just click the link in the description or go to skl.sh/someoneNewsMarch. Skillshare is Wombo's friend, like Cody is Wombo's friend, because Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of exciting and enlightening and perfect classes for creative and curious people who want to be Wombo's best friend. Discover new skills like communication and communicating with your best friend Cody, or nurture your existing interests and skills and communication and art and best friends, along with discovering and learning about communication and confidence and art and music and being creative with your friends. Skillshare is always launching brand new premium classes about stuff like communication and confidence and art and writing and music and graphic design, and it's all for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. That's half the price of 20 cups of coffee if coffee costs $1, which it doesn't! Wombo became a Skillshare member so he could learn to better communicate with Mr. Cody, and then Mr. Cody became Wombo's best friend, and then Mr. Cody discovered Skillshare's class Simple Character Animation. Create a work cycle with Dewick from Fraser Davidson. Look at Wombo! Me! It was quick, and it was easy, and now Wombo and Mr. Cody are more creative than ever! The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Or go to skl.sh/someoneNewsMarch! That's this month!
Thanks, puppet everybody loves. Hey, remember fire? Not the fun, cleansing kind in like a mall, but rather the wild animal herding kind of fire. There were major wildfires on both sides of the world, in Australia and the United States. And can you guess which country saw those disasters as a signal to pursue laws preventing climate change? Well, the answer is neither country. Like, obviously America wasn't going to do anything, but hey, look, neither did the other country with the not America advantage. Which is weird that Australia, the third largest coal exporter in the world, would have a government that denies climate change. Oh, wait, no, now I see. Now that I say it out loud, I see what happened there. So it's a little comforting, right? Like failing a quiz and then finding out the whole class failed it too. Great job, everyone! Also, speaking of great job, big boys, thanks to that previous loser president, there are still disaster areas in Washington that have yet to get any federal aid. Places that, right after being wiped out by the fire, asked for aid, and then proceeded to get literally zero response back from our government. For, like, no reason. The good news being that Joe Biden has just now corrected that nearly a year later. So That's good. All it took was having an entirely new president willing to do the bare minimum. Hey, let's do another spin of the wheel of stuff threatening the Pacific Northwest. Click, 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 click. Death by bee it is. America was shocked to hear about these giant, terrifying hornets at the start of 2020, only to promptly deplete their shits to give stockpile upon learning that they didn't actually pose a threat to humans. They mostly just hang out in Canada, otherwise known as Not America, where they continue to pose a problem. Again, not so much to people, but rather bees. The people of insects, who you may have heard aren't doing so great. As a new study just found, an entire quarter of bee species have gone missing since the 1990s. And while the murder hornets are a problem for our little dagger-assed pals, they really don't compare to bigger threats like climate change and pesticides. And statistically speaking, most of you stopped paying attention, because it turns out that this other study here found the media absolutely doesn't talk about the declining bee population. And when they do, it's rarely connected to climate change, and often in back sections of publications. And we only really hear about it when there's something viral attached, like these murder hornets. And that's pretty wild, since if bees were to go extinct, we'd lose entire kinds of food. We wouldn't starve or anything, but stuff like certain fruits and fucking coffee would become way harder to produce. Also, honey? It's not so much apocalyptic as it just sucks, but also it's pretty apocalyptic. And we should care more. We should care more that monarch butterflies are going away, because they're cool and deserve to live, which is more than I can say for boars! Oh good. Hello? What?
Cody, it's you, but from a second timeline.
I mean, we didn't even include a plot device to make this possible, but sure, hi, what's up?
It's extremely important that you don't use that other Cody's backward time device thingy. If you do, you'll create a temporal rift, creating an alternate universe where boars evolve to the point of obtaining advanced business degrees and taking over most Fortune 500 companies.
Great! I'm gonna grab a water while you do... In my world, the business hog menace becomes so great that humans learn to escape into a collective dream world harnessed by a new technology. We used this invention to fight back, invading the dreams of the boar to manipulate them into dissolving their companies. Yeah, I get it. We're doing Nolan movies. Listen, I swear I won't do whatever the thing you're saying I do, alright? Does that work?
That's not good enough, Cody! We need bones, Cody! You have to swear on your bones!
Come on.
It's Warmbo.
Just be quiet, okay? Be quiet.
Warmbo knows you're in there. Warmbo can smell your blood, silly goat. Warmbo, we'll be back, Mr. Cody.
You think he's gone?
He's never gone.
Listen, you clearly have your hands full, so I'll just, shoot you an email about this? Yes, that works way better for me. Yeah, is it the Gmail one still? Hang it up now. Moving on to tech news. Remember net neutrality? Do you remember that thing? It sure seems like it was a lot of fuss for nothing, huh? All the way back in 2018, we were pretty pissed off at Ajit Pai for wanting to repeal the net neutrality rules, saying that internet providers must treat all communications equally, and claiming that repealing them would result in some kind of awesome growth because of the free market, and Reagan's ghost would apparate and fight Bernie Sanders if the internet was deregulated. Here he is, moving his useless mouth.
We also heard from many small broadband companies, which are critical to providing more competition in the marketplace. They told us that these rules prevented them from extending their service because they had to spend money on lawyers and accountants.
Yes, Lord knows, lawyers and accountants cost the same as it would to extend internet service. That checks out. Ultimately, the FCC did repeal net neutrality, despite no one wanting that. And then the benefits that Ajit Pai outlined, well, they never happened. Providers didn't expand coverage, and in fact, companies like AT&T have slowed down their expansion. Reagan's spirit remained trapped in the outworld. Comcast cut their spending, and the boosts in speed the FCC boasted had happened before net neutrality was repealed. Though, on the flip side, it sure seems like the internet didn't end either. So you could say that perhaps both sides were being alarmist, The answer is hard, sorta, to not really, because there have absolutely been abuses since the repeal of these rules, such as AT&T rewarding HBO Max viewers with no data caps, all of the companies now selling your location data, or this of a story where Verizon throttled the data of firefighters while they were dealing with the California wildfire. Oh right, we had wildfires in California too. I almost forgot. Man, I swear this wasn't supposed to be a bummer of an episode. I thought it was gonna be like simple. Hey, hi, hey you, there you backwards I hate what you represent. Great! That's great stuff! But what is sort of interesting is what happened next with net neutrality. Specifically, this current pandemic and the demand it created on internet services. See, back when they voted to repeal, a Republican commissioner who voted in favor was quoted saying, "I, for one, see great value in the prioritization of telemedicine and autonomous car technology over cat videos." And now that, in the pandemic, usage has predictably shot up 47%, it seems like there hasn't been an issue dictating the need to prioritize data. The internet hasn't exploded, despite companies cutting spending and not expanding, and that's good, at least the part where we didn't break the internet. But as Wired points out, had there been a major problem during this spike, it would have been completely up to the private companies to choose which services to prioritize. And maybe they shouldn't have that power, you know? In other words, there have been a bunch of studies and articles saying that the economic and consumer benefits of repealing net neutrality haven't happened, while the dangers of putting the internet in the hands of private companies remain the same. Just because it hasn't been a problem yet doesn't mean it won't slowly erode over time. And so far, we've been literally going by an honor system during the pandemic, as in the FCC nicely asking ISPs to pledge they won't fuck people over while everyone is out of work. That pledge having since expired, and at no point legally obligated them to do anything, as evidenced by the nearly 3,000 customer complaints filed with the FCC during this honor period. It's weird how you can't just ask corporations to be good to people. It's like they only care about money. Look, this is all boring and I hate it, but along with this continued battle with ISPs, we're seeing a huge moment for the future of the internet during this pandemic. Not just because of the heavy reliance, but rather that last year closed out a massive Justice Department investigation into Google and Facebook, resulting in a ton of antitrust lawsuits. It's sort of a thing we already knew, but now have data to back up, which is that Facebook and Google have been slowly inhibiting things like newspapers or, internet comedy websites to exist, thanks to their abilities to buy out and dominate access to social media and search engines. Specifically, Facebook buying out their competitors and Google spending billions to ensure their search engine was prioritized on devices. It's going to be long and drawn out, but what's actually good about it is that thanks to these investigations, smaller companies that were screwed over actually get to take a legal stand that, and I cannot stress this enough, desperately need to happen against these terrible companies that are also cool. We love Google's YouTube, don't we, folks? You know what that sound means. It's time for checking in with all those people we hate. Hey, where my Skrelly fellies at? You probably remember the pharma bro who pissed off a nation before cathartically going to jail and even more cathartically being forced to give up his prized Wu-Tang album. But did you know that he's still an asshole? That's right! The still rich prison jerk recently made news for attempting to get an early release to, quote, work on a coronavirus treatment. The release was denied on account of being fucking hilarious, and that's certainly good, but this news also serves as a reminder that Skrelly is, as I mentioned, still pretty rich, but not nearly as rich as he once was. And also, as I mentioned, he's still an attention-hungry, narcissistic asshole. An asshole who, at the time of his sentencing, told the judge, "I was never motivated by money. I wanted to grow my stature and my reputation." An asshole who, while in prison, was allowed to speak at Harvard to the protests of many, protests that he seemed to revel in. This asshole that I speak of will be out of prison in 2023. And now I'm speaking directly to Joe Rogan when I simply say, hey, don't do it. Same with you, Dancing with the Stars. Don't do it, all right? Let this one go away forever, please. Speaking of letting things go, a thing that we should not let go. That thing being Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, all right, so that's still happening. His accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is still in jail and being checked on literally every 15 minutes. You know, in case someone tries to kill her. Meanwhile, Prince Andrew is still at large and should be considered armed and dangerous. Ghislaine is currently in the legal stages of trying to get her case thrown out because the jury was too white, which feels like maybe she's desperate, and maybe that means she'll, I don't know, give up the sex tapes of former presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton that she absolutely once told a 60 Minutes producer that she has. Weird how we just sort of know that two former presidents and whatever Prince Andrew is, I guess a prince, absolutely had sex with underage slaves and are rapists. Like, we know this, right? There's so much evidence and video and photos of them hanging out with the sex monster guy, and they're all super sketchy about the whole thing, and we're just kind of waiting and hoping that at some point they'll go to jail for it. And I can't help but to think about that Beirut port explosion I mentioned earlier, and how all the people in charge of investigation are also the guilty people, and how that problem sure seems like a running theme in the world these days, and then my mind just drifts to those yurts.
Wombo is back for adventure.
You can't hide in there forever.
You silly goat.
Hey, Warmbo, I'm so glad you're here. I was just talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton. You want to hang out?
Maybe I'll come back later.
Yes, I thought, you boomer sock. Warmbo is 67 years old. He's just doing that voice because he knows you hate it. Anywho, what else is terrible? You know, while we're really balls deep in sorrow, totally blasting it to sorrow, should we talk about the opioid crisis and how it got worse during the pandemic? Or maybe Amy Coney Barrett. Remember that she's still a thing? It's like, boy, from the cops getting off to the wildfires to the Epstein stuff, catching up on the news is mostly just getting to learn that there isn't any justice and no one learns anything. It means having a whole lot of distracting, frustrating things all coming knocking at your door at once like a...
Real quick, sorry. I was wondering if I could borrow your copy of Home Fries.
The movie Home Fries?
Okay, fine, you got me. I was just lonely and wanted to say hello. Hey, have you reversed time yet?
Mr. Cody, I know you're busy, but I need someone to tuck Wombo in.
Warmbo, cut the weird shit. You're collecting Social Security. Hey guys, could you both maybe... Cody, quick! The hog police are after me. I need to hide in your dreams.
You know, Vince Gilligan wrote Home Fries.
My name is Coty, by the way, with a T. Coty? No! Hey, everyone! No! You're all very zany and fun, and most of you are pretty handsome, but can we just, for once, get through a single video without smearing some kind of clown shit all over the audience? Just this once!
You're still making your silly video?
Well, I'm almost done. I was just about to talk about Amy Coney Barrett and then do an outro about how there's no hope for justice and then plug my upcoming yurt business. You know, usual stuff. Cody's Yurties, working title.
So you're not gonna talk about any of the good stuff that happened in 2020?
Not really. It was kind of a terrible year. Kind of makes you want to invest in portable living.
So nothing good happened at all? That makes Wombo sad.
Well, there was some cool weed laws passed, right? We don't really talk about the other good things the last election did, I guess. Recreational marijuana is now legalized in Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, South Dakota, plus Oregon and DC decriminalized a bunch of other drugs, and that's actually pretty amazing, especially if you were alive during the DARE years. We're starting to, albeit slowly, reduce prison sentences for pot. LGBTQ rights had a similar boost last year too. Utah banned conversion therapy, pretty bare minimum, but thanks Utah. Way to limp toward progress. Also, the Supreme Court ruled that the 1964 Civil Rights Act protects LGBTQ individuals from getting fired, so that's also good. And it probably should be noted that Neil Gorsuch, Donald Trump's first appointee to the Supreme Court, ruled on the right side of history. unlike Trump's second appointee, Brett Droopy Sad Boy Rapist Kavanaugh. And it probably should also be noted that Kavanaugh and Gorsuch both did vote to reject the appeal of Kim Davis, that lady who tried to deny marriage licenses for same-sex couples. So, an overall victory in the courts, both despite of and thanks to a few of Trump appointees. But also, just to be clear, we aren't looking at all the many other rulings from 2020 and making a judgment on these people. It's just nice to know that everything isn't definitely bad all the time, or definitely good. That Amy Coney Barrett, for example, has been pretty center to left so far in her rulings, and most of Trump's judges have not supported his claims of election fraud, nor did any of them side with Trump over the release of his taxes. Again, they're all still conservative judges and will undoubtedly side against progress in the future, but it's still good news. Or at least, not bad news. It's just news, folks. And I don't know, maybe that puppet and boar guy and whatever the third one was, maybe they were right, and I could have done an easier job of highlighting the stuff that's not terrible. Other really cool historical stuff the 2020 election gave us is Sarah McBride, our first openly transgender state senator. Cori Bush became the first black woman to represent Missouri. Then in New York, we had Mondaire Jones and Richie Torres become the first black and Afro-Latino members of Congress who were also LGBTQ. So that's all gravy. Also, unrelated, but in Denver, they repealed a ban on pit bull ownership. So that's a win for anyone who likes those dopey, swole-ass babies. Look at this dumb What an asshole! Anyway, yeah, I skipped some good news, I guess. When I mentioned the net neutrality stuff, maybe I should have added that Ajit Pai has already stepped down and has been replaced by someone who might actually restore those laws. And that California is already enforcing their own net neutrality laws as we speak. And you know, we're starting to see some other Trump-era villains get taken down a notch. That Louis DeJoy guy. You know, the guy who sure seemed to be trying to undermine the USPS. Sure seems to be determined to stay on. And that's a dick move. And it's weird that Biden can't just fire him, I guess. But the good news is that the Postal Service's Board of Governors currently has 3 vacant seats to fill. And nominating people to fill those happens to be Biden's job. Something he's now doing. This would create a Democratic majority on this USPS board and enable them to fire DeJoy if they need to. But also, don't necessarily want to either, as it currently stands that they are giving him a shot for some stupid reason. But overall, the situation is generally good, because even though DeJoy is hanging around and the post office isn't doing so hot, the power has shifted to the Democrats and Biden who, in this case, happen to have the right idea about what the post office should be. Specifically, they are heavily against privatizing it, and at least seem to understand that it shouldn't be considered a business expected to make a profit. So even though the USPS isn't doing well, the people in charge also don't expect it to, and are reversing the efforts to cut back on days and charge more for postage, and also want cool electric cars, so that's neat too. Electric stuff is neat. I mean, who knows if any of this will happen, because it sure seems like Biden is not quite doing a bunch of stuff he said he was gonna do, but it's a start, I guess. Yay, progress. Be happy? Not bad news? Just news. Which is not bad. Still, there's a lot of other good things happening in the world in terms of not dicking the environment. When I talked about the wildfires, and climate change, and missing species, Australia's exports and all that, I guess it might be nice to also mention that Australia is starting to export renewable energy too. And we actually found a lost species last year that we assumed had died out. And other endangered species are thriving in some places. And there are big, otherwise sinister companies that use 2020 to commit to big renewable energy pledges. And some that actually met their goals. And in fact, renewable energy continued to grow in 2020 despite the pandemic. We actually had the first ever successful flight of an all-electric plane in 2020. And if that keeps going, if we keep advancing electric planes, that's actually like really good for reducing some carbon emissions. Not to mention that Sweden is right now developing a wind-powered cargo ship, something we super need considering that large ships are basically just trash dicks dragging through the ocean. Heck, even NASCAR is finding ways to be carbon neutral, not to mention bare minimum not racist, what with the banning of Confederate flags. And hey, That's another good thing from 2020. Mississippi removed their Confederate state flag. Remember all those protests concerning Confederate statues? Well, it turns out that we removed like 100 of those things, which is a start. Do we have a clip? We do not. Geez, I talked about some bummer international news, but failed to mention all of the positive stuff happening around the world that fell through the cracks. Africa is free from wild polio, so that's good. I'm generally anti-polio. Also things I'm anti: terrorism. And while we certainly have degrees of that going on in the United States, worldwide, we're actually at a 5-year low. Other things that are globally low is that hepatitis nobody likes. Maternal mortality, as in women dying due to childbirth. That's also getting low, but still an issue. We generally got a lot of medical breakthroughs in 2020, such as a new blood cancer vaccine and the world's first artificial eye with a 3D retina with capabilities that might exceed human vision. Literally Star Trek shit. This actually needs stressing because it's also one of the only good things to come out of the pandemic, which is that our science community actually became more global in 2020 because of COVID. It was the fastest a vaccine has come out ever. The way one scientist put it was that they achieved 10 years worth of work in just 11 months. And it was done because of a global cooperation that transcended governments. Again, Star Trek shit. The results of which aren't just going to change how we deal with viruses in the future, but how we do science in general. I mean, just to be clear, the disruption of a global pandemic definitely halted a lot of important non-virus research and negatively impacted the community as well. But you know how we thought a disaster like aliens or whatnot would unite the world, and then it didn't actually do that? Well, it sort of did do that thing, just only for scientists, so, neat. There were a lot of uplifting things I could have mentioned. When I brought up prisons, which are bad, I could have at least pointed out that Biden did order the DOJ to end private prisons, or that imprisonment rates for minorities in the US have been on a steady decline. It feels like drops in the bucket changes, but it's still worth reporting, because it means that it wasn't all hopeless, that there are hints of justice to come out of 2020. Like how, yes, so many cops are now seeing zero consequences and having charges dropped when they were clearly guilty of murder. But at least the protesters who were arrested last year are also having their charges dropped. Like in large numbers, protesters are having their charges dissolved because civil liberties and stuff. It's bare minimum, folks, but also kinda nice to see this vindication reaching people associated with Antifa, And just to have the FBI director get up in front of the country and flat out say that Antifa isn't a problem, and in fact it's the FA who we should have been worried about, and to feel like perhaps the world is making a little more sense again. And so ultimately, when you take away the virus, 2020 still wasn't a great year, but not the worst. And it did end with election results that were more good than bad. And a lot of bad things were offset by some good stuff. And I don't know, maybe we don't have to land on a hard verdict here. Maybe 2020 was just kind of muddled and underwhelming and sort of canceled itself out. And we can all just forget it ever happened. Like Tenet. And so with that, I guess I have to go back and add the good news part into the video you just watched, fulfill the time loop, or whatever. Who gives a shit?
You did it, little Cody! I knew you'd get there.
What? You mean to a feeling of emotional indifference and exhaustion?
That's right. Congratulations.
You know what? Thanks. You're right. This dull beige inside of me is, I guess, better than the unaccompanied rage I started with.
You're welcome. Now get out there and do a time reverse.
I will.
And, if you can, check out some of that backward sex. It feels great when it, goes back inside of you.
Super hanging up now. Well, bye. I'm eating time. Hi, welcome to the end, where I say thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and we've got a patreon.com/somemorenews. We've got a podcast called Even More News, and other links that you could click on if you go to the description box of the video, like and subscribe.